I was born on March 18, 2000, in Rio de Janeiro, into a family that loved me. I was the middle child and had an older sister that was 6 years older than me, so my arrival to the family was like a gift for her too. She finally had someone else to share her toys with at home, although at first she didn't like the idea very much. My parents showered me with affection. I remember their smiles when they saw me laugh and their comforting hugs whenever I cried. They were my safe space. I always felt loved and cared for by my family. As I grew up, I loved going out to play with my friends in the streets and parks near our house. We spent hours running around, laughing, and playing our own version of soccer. Looking back, I was just a regular kid. I enjoyed playing ball, eating a lot, and getting into a bit of trouble every now and then. But most of the time, I was pretty well behaved. I had to be, because my family was really into religion. Every Wednesday night, we used to attend a religious center in our neighborhood, a beautiful area in the north zone of where I lived. Even though I was just a kid, I really enjoyed those outings with my family. To be honest, I enjoyed any chance I got to ride in my mother's car. She had this cool silver sedan. I remember sitting in the back seat, watching the streets go by, and trying to keep up with all the signs and people that I saw. Inside the car, the four of us were singing and laughing nonstop. Sometimes I had to argue with my sister over the radio, and most of the time, I won. She would get mad, and Dad would end up making silly faces to cheer her up. I just remembered smiling a lot and looking forward to always going back outside to do it all over again, until everything changed forever. On February 7th, 2007, we had just got out of church and were driving back in my mom's favorite car. My father was not with us this time, so my sister sat in the front seat and I was in the back. I was doing what I usually do and just looked out my window, daydreaming the ride away. Honestly, for how young I was in my own little world. Not a care for me was given, but little did I know that Brazil, my country, wasn't the tropical paradise I thought it out to be. I also did not know that Rio's streets were some of the most dangerous in South America, or that the violence and evil lurked every corner. But why would I? I was only 6 years old. I wasn't supposed to worry about anything at all at such a young and tender age. Looking out the car window, everything was getting darker, but I can tell that we were in some type of neighborhood. Then my mother stopped at a red light, and I didn't think much about it, but that would be the last time in my little life that I would see my mother. There were two cars in front of us. One was a taxi, but I didn't pay much attention to it. Suddenly, three big guys got out of that taxi. Two of them had guns pointed at our car. I felt so scared seeing those metal barrels coming closer to my window. I started shaking like crazy. The guys surrounded the car and started banging on the windows with their guns to show that they were serious. Those guns were huge and heavy. It was terrifyingly loud, and I started crying for my mother from the fear of possibly being hurt. My mother got really scared too, because she had already been robbed on the street before. She knew she couldn't handle these guys. They yelled at us to get out of the car, pushing us and shouting things at my mother. I wanted to hide, but I couldn't stop crying. Everything happened so fast. My mother got out, and so did my sister, but I was still stuck in the back seat, trapped by my own seatbelt. My mother rushed over to try to get me out, but she was nervous, and my seatbelt was stuck. As my mother was pulling me out as much as she could, one of the bad guys pushed her away before she could unbuckle my seatbelt. They slammed the door, and before I knew it, I was hanging out of the car with my little body swinging. The car took off, dragging me along the ground. I saw the face my mother and sister had while yelling at the men to stop the car, screaming my name, but the car never stopped. It just kept going faster and faster while I was being dragged ruthlessly along the road. I was crying and yelling for my mother. The rough pavement was scraping my whole body. My clothes were getting torn to shreds. I screamed really loud for help, but my cries got lost in the noise of the super loud engine and the screeching tires. Nobody seemed to hear me. They just kept driving faster, dragging my little body like I did not matter. There were times my body hit against the big back wheel or even bumps on the road, which made me bounce really hard off of it. They knew I was there, and yet still did nothing. They could have just left me lying somewhere and just take the car, but they just kept going. The guy driving started swerving all over the road, like they wanted me to fall off the car and be left lying in the street. I heard people on the street shouting to the man that I was there, but one of them yelled back that I wasn't a kid, but a quote-unquote dummy of Judas. I don't know if it's traditional in other places in the world, but in my country, people take Judas figures to the main squares or streets. Some of them are really huge, taller than a house, but others are small, like I was. When night comes, people set fire to the Judas figures. They burn them completely until there's nothing left. This is to show that they don't like what Judas did by betraying Jesus. But I wasn't Judas, so what did I do so wrong to deserve this? There were more and more people on the corner screaming as loud as they could for the car to stop, but the men simply ignored them. They even pointed a gun at a man that was on a motorcycle who wanted to help me. I didn't have the strength anymore to keep crying from all the pain I felt. Eventually, those guys did stop the car in a dark, lonely alley. They got out and they ran off, leaving me still hanging from the car. I tried my hardest to stay alive, but I was already gone long before they stopped the car. Even before that kind man on a motorcycle came over to try to help me, I was already gone. I'm not sure when exactly it happened, but I knew I wasn't in this world anymore. I had lost all my fingers, my knees, and my head was barely attached to my neck. That's how my last 10 minutes of life went. When those men stopped in that alley, I thought maybe they would have some compassion for me, but they just checked my mom's car to see if there were any more valuable items to steal. I don't know how, but one of their families finally realized what they had done, and finally, they handed them over to the police to pay for their horrible crime. But for me, it was already too late. In less than 8 hours, the police caught the 5 criminals. Some of them were much older than me, up to 23 years of age, but one of them was still a kid, under 16 years of age. My situation was so traumatic, especially how the way they treated me before I died. Me and my family just got out of church and simply just wanted to go home. In no time, everyone knew about me, and as more details about the crime came out, people were extremely outraged. How could they drag me for so many miles without anyone stopping them? They passed a police station, a fire station, a military barracks, and several places with lots of people outside. But nobody could stop my suffering. In the end, all 5 of them were sentenced to 45 years in prison for what they did to me. Many thought it was too little and unfair, But the truth is, nothing will bring back the life they cruelly took away from me when I was just an innocent little boy who was just about to turn 7.
Lead me where my trust is without borders. Let me walk upon the waters wherever you would call me. Take me deeper than my feet could ever wander, and my faith would be made stronger in the presence of mercy.